What it do, cuckolds? It's your boy, the Hater, up in this piece. Hater outdoors, you know what I'm saying? And I decided to take a moment to look and see how much viewership Smackdown drew now that it moved to USA Network, because a lot of people were saying it's not a demotion. You know, the USA Network is just as good as Fox, and obviously they were all wrong. Now, something strange happened. On their last episode of Smackdown, they got like a very, very shitty rating, right? They got like a 1.7 million or so. And then on their first episode, which was this star-studded episode that included Roman Reigns' return, they got a similar 1.7, right? A little bit less. They still went down, right? But now we're in AEW numbers, motherfuckers. Now WWE and Raw and SmackDown are now in AEW numbers. Not current AEW numbers, but they're now in prime AEW numbers. So imagine if AEW started today. They would draw like a 1.4 million on their first episode, and SmackDown would draw 1.7. They're right there. They're competing right there if they did that today. They didn't, so that's on them. But think about that for a second. Right? If we ignore the last episode of SmackDown on Fox, which we have to because it's an outlier, right? The rest of the data points hover around like the 2.2, 2.3 million, 2.5 sometimes, 2.6 sometimes, but generally in that 2.2 to 2.5 million range. So as a result of moving to an inferior network, and don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of USA Network. That's my fucking childhood right there. Raw was on the USA Network when it was at its best for sure, right? And then it moved to like TNT, to the thing that then became Spike TV. I forget what it's called. TNN, I think. Anyways, doesn't matter. Point is, like, USA Network rules. I've always liked USA Network, but let's call it like it is. This is a step down, and it's a step down of 500,000. So Fox is like major TV, right? Broadcast network. Everyone gets Fox, but I believe you need to have basic cable to get USA Network, and some people don't have that. As a matter of fact, millions of people don't have that. As a matter of fact, 500 or so thousand WWE viewers don't have that. So all of a sudden, SmackDown, which was positioned as the #1 show for the last 5 years, that's where Roman Reigns was there, because it's the one on Fox. All of a sudden now, SmackDown, just like that, is on equal footing with Raw. This shows that, quite frankly, I mean, Roman Reigns, you can't blame it on him because he just came back, but this shows without a shadow of a doubt that there is no draws in wrestling, right? There are no draws in wrestling. Now, I could be wrong. The bounce back could be significant next week, but I highly doubt it. I, in fact, expect a bigger drop-off next week because, realistically, I don't see Roman Reigns coming next week, even if he's there for another contract signing or some bullshit, which I highly doubt. Eventually, he's going to go away again, right? And eventually, Cody Rhodes is going to lose the title, which means they have to give it to someone worthwhile. They don't have anyone worthwhile. Maybe they'll give it back to Roman or to Randy Orton or something, but literally any other option is just not going to be good enough. And as I predicted, by January, right, which is when like Raw moves to Netflix, and they're going to be immune. They're going to become the #1 show again when they go on Netflix, right? They're going to be immune from the ratings scrutiny because we're not going to know that 50,000 people are watching Raw. We're never going to know that. We're going to know in a few years when the Netflix deal is up and they don't renew it. That's when we're going to know. But they've sheltered themselves for a few years. We're going to see the ratings of SmackDown, which is now like the only show that we can gauge. It's going to fall to below 1.5 million, by the end of the year probably. And if not by the end of the year, by like next March or so, it's almost guaranteed, right? So once again, this idea of SmackDown is drawing 2.3 million, it's breaking records, that's not a thing anymore. Forget about that. That was a thing when they were on Fox, a real network. Now they're not on Fox anymore. So now they're going to settle into that familiar 1.5 million territory. Raw is also in that familiar territory, in the 1.7-ish territory, right? It's a wrap, motherfucks. This is not the future of wrestling. It's not on TV anymore. It's just not. They're going to pivot big time. The WWE Network could make a comeback. I mean, they're pretty much throwing it on Netflix for now, but that's what it's going to end up being because it's not sustainable for TV anymore. It just doesn't draw. It's as simple as that. And now that Monday Night Football is back, I highly doubt that today's episode of Raw Even, like, if it's under 1.5 million, I wouldn't be shocked. You know? I mean, I'd be a little surprised, but I wouldn't be shocked. And if it's not, it's gonna be. So keep all that shit in mind. Wrestling just isn't as big as it was in the past. And people want to blame this on other things. Like, well, sometimes people watch it on YouTube. Get the fuck out of here. You know what I'm saying? Like, first of all, YouTube didn't start yesterday. You know what I mean? That's one thing that I hate. It's like the whole like Generation Alpha and Gen Z. They think that the world began with them. It's the weirdest thing ever. Like, people are like, well, now people can go on the internet and get results. We could do that in 1999. You could go in 1999, motherfucks. Go on Yahoo or Ask Jeeves. Remember Ask Jeeves, cuckolds? Right? You go and be like, hey, Jeeves, what happened on Raw today? And Ask Jeeves would take you to a website that tells you that. We had chat rooms, AOL chat rooms, where you could go, you could ask people, hey, what the hell did I miss on Raw? We had WWE.com, which is one of the first prominent websites ever, really. It's like one of the first big ones that like mattered, that people, you know, my age cared about, right? Well, obviously there was other websites, but you know what I mean, right? It's like the first entertainment one, you know, like all the sports ones kind of came first, right? We had YouTube 5 years ago. We had YouTube 10 years ago. We had YouTube 15 years ago. And the ratings have keep going down. So this idea that everything is to blame, except for the clear problem, which is inferiority of the product, is getting to a point where it's laughable. Like, I know that you know that the truth is what I'm saying it is. And that is that wrestling's gotten worse, and that's why the ratings have gone down. It has nothing to do with like alternative ways of watching. Like, we've had all of these alternatives like 3 years ago. You know? I know that you think that the internet began with you, right? And like, I see a lot of these comments, it's really weird. There's all these like teenagers, you know when you're like 13, you think you're edgy and you think you're cool. I got news for all the y'alls that are 13. When you hit about 17, 18, maybe you start hanging out with some 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds, you realize that you ain't cool at all. And then when you hit 23, you run into like a 28-year-old and you realize, fuck, I ain't shit. And this happens for the foreseeable future, cucks. And I think that's what's gonna happen with a lot of these disenchanted fans, these disillusioned morons, right? The new crop of WWE fans, and you know, generally the new crop of idiots on the internet, they say things like, oh, this person is too pure for the internet, like as if they have some domain over the internet. Like, and this is the thing that pisses me off the most about the culture, right? The American culture. It's like, now people, like, I hear people being like, well, edgy jokes were funny in 2012. No, motherfucks. They were funny. Go watch Andrew Dice Clay in the 80s and tell me about edgy humor. It just wasn't called edgy humor back then. It was just called humor. That was just the standard, motherfucks. The standard of the jokes was like shit that people today would like have a heart attack. It would send all these motherfucks back to therapy. You know what I mean? So that's the problem. The culture has shifted and wrestling has gone downhill, right? And you could see this from the clear evidence right before our eyes as it pertains to Smackdown. Now I know you're thinking, well, Hater, you just said yourself that they're on a worse network. Yeah, but how did they get there, motherfucks? The fucking Lachlan Murdoch, who's like the son of Rupert Murdoch, and he's like basically the boss. Right? He's like, look, we are a like, you can find the quote, and I'm gonna paraphrase it, but it's basically everything that I'm saying. He said, we are a profit-driven business here at Fox, right? And he's like, at the end of the day, WWE didn't pull in the numbers that they thought that they would, and that we thought that they would, right? Then he gave him a freebie, and he was like, oh, and also they wanted us to give them more replay value, and we didn't. But of course, why would they? It's like you're drawing 2 million. Like for Fox, that's like bullshit. You can go, like right now, if you have time, you can go on Wikipedia and type House MD, the popular show Dr. House, as we call it in many other countries. You could go look at House and see how many people were watching it at its height. It was like 8 million people every week, right? Which is like almost 4 times, right? Okay, it's more like 3. It's 3 times the viewership of SmackDown. That was also on Fox. You know what I'm saying? And it was just blowing things out of the water. And there's other shows, Walking Dead, you know, drawing like 12 million views. Seinfeld back in the day. You know what I mean? Like Friends. You got a bunch of shows that were out there, Monday Night Football, that are just drawing more and more every year, right? And wrestling is not. So Fox is like, oh shit, wait a second. We could lose money and keep showing Cucky Rhodes, or we could do literally anything else and make money. Yeah, I think we're gonna have to get rid of you, motherfuck. And that's exactly what happened. They said, beat it, right? And then WWE had to go shop around for a deal like Tony Khan. They had to go and be like, oh, USA Network, you always take us back. USA Network is like the gaping hole of TV. They have like no standards, it seems like. Someone says bend over and they take it. There's been years where there's been no WWE presence on the USA Network, but they're always waiting with their mouth wide open to receive the giant cock of the WWE. You see what I'm saying? That's what happens. They have no standards, and they're gonna have the show die on their network because it's not. And you know what? In many ways, think about it like this. Wrestling on TV is dead, right? Think about it. Raw, the number one wrestling show, like irrespective of the fact that Smackdown has been positioned as the top show for the last few years, Raw is the show. Raw is the flagship show. It's the A show, and it always has been. Right? Here's how you know. John Cena was the champion on Raw. The end. You know what I'm saying? His like 99% of his career, he was on Raw. So Raw is Raw, and Raw is off TV. In a few months, Raw, which we grew up watching on TV every Monday, and which has been on TV basically every Monday for the last 37 years, or whatever the fuck it's been, is now not going to be on TV. Now you're going to need a Netflix subscription. And even though Netflix is watched worldwide, you see what I'm saying? You see what I'm getting at here? Even though Netflix has been watched worldwide, it does not have the same reach as TV, and it never can, because some people don't have Netflix. And you don't have the capacity anymore to go and watch Raw on TV, and let's say on hour 2, Shawn Michaels comes back. And you can now no longer call your friend and say, hey bro, tune into channel 50 or channel 47, which was what USA was in cable back in the day. Put the number on 47 on the little cable box. Remember the small black cable box? Not the fancy one. The one that was about maybe 10 inches by 10 inches. It was a square little box. Remember that, motherfucks? You put it on 47 and Raw came out and you were watching it live with your friend. On Netflix, that's not going to be a thing anymore. It's not going to be as accessible. You got to turn on Netflix. You got to figure out, you got to stop what you're doing. You got to answer your text. These things are not going to happen the same way. So as far as I'm concerned, shit's over, motherfucks. Shit's over.